Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be breaking down the indie comic called Do A Powerbomb. It is written and the art is by one creator, Daniel Warren Johnson, so this is his passion project. And when I read this book a few months ago, I thought it was so fun, I wanted to make sure I found time to cover it, so here we are. Now, what is this book about? It is about wrestling. It is very similar to kind of Dragonball Z in a way. If you're familiar with Dragonball Z, they would always have these big martial arts tournaments. Well, that is essentially what this book is. It is one big, giant wrestling tournament with all of these kooky, crazy characters from all these different dimensions, and there is a real stake to the tournament, and it is just so fun. There is so much kinetic energy in here, and the artwork is really great. But also, behind all the crazy action and fun and whatnot, there's also a real story with some heart in here. So yeah, it is great stuff. Let's dive into it. Do A Powerbomb by Daniel Warren Johnson. Do A Powerbomb, written and art by Daniel Warren Johnson. Colors by Mike Spicer. Issue 1. The Tokyo Grand Pro Wrestling, or TGPW, is having a match for their Grand World Heavyweight title. The defending champion is Lona Steelrose, and the heel and her opponent and her main rival is Cobra Sun. Before the match, backstage, Lona is talking to her husband, Jacob Steelrose, as well as her daughter, Lona Steelrose. Lona and Jacob all wish their mother well, and they kiss and hug her. Lona's brother is there as well to wish her good luck. He goes by the name Uncle Blood. It is now time for the big match. Lona says bye to everyone. She tells Lona that her dad has to work late tonight, but Uncle Blood is going to sit with her in the audience. She then runs out to the stage and the crowd is roaring. The announcers say, "Introducing first from Tokyo, Japan, the Iron Flower, the Unbreakable Blossom, the Tokyo Grand Heavyweight Champion of the World, Lona Steelrose." When Lona gets to the ring, one of the hosts asks her how she feels coming off of her 9th successful title defense and what's going through her mind right now. She talks about her training and her love of wrestling and her love of her family. She says, "I fight for my family, I fight for my daughter, I fight for my lover, but they're not my only family. You, every one of you are my family." She says this, pointing to the crowd. Lona's Uncle Blood is tearing up. He finds it so moving. Then, the challenger comes to the ring. The announcer says, "And the challenger from Calgary, Alberta, the poisonous powerhouse, the high-flying scorcher, Cobra Sun." Cobra Sun, he's the bad guy. He's the heel. As he's walking down to the ring, he says, to cut his music. Cobra Sun, he plays up to the crowd. He encourages their boos. He says that Lona Steelrose is so sweet, it makes him sick. That she has forgotten what it means to be a pro wrestler. It's not about the crowds. It's not about love or family or adulation. It's about power, status, money, and most of all, it's about that. He says, pointing to the championship belt, and he says, "And I will be taking it from you tonight," as he points to Lona Steelrose. The match then begins. Lona, with a big jumping kick, hits Cobra Sun in his face. Cobra returns with a punch to Lona's belly. Cobra Sun then flips Lona over his shoulder and throws her out of the ring and into the crowd. Lona, Lona's daughter, is in the audience. She's scared for her mom's life, but her Uncle Blood tells her not to worry. Her mom knows exactly what she is doing. Cobra Sun, he goes to the top ropes, and he jumps off, doing a backflip from the top of the ring corner there and landing in the crowd right on top of Lona. Cobra Sun, he then drags Lona back to the ring. He brings her over to his corner. He's gonna do his finishing move on Lona. His finishing move is called the Setting Sun. Not only is he going to do a Setting Sun, he's gonna do it from the top rope. As Cobra Sun is on the top of the rope, he is pulling Lona up to him. And as he is preparing to do the final move, he starts losing his footing on the ropes. He slips. He says, "No," real quiet. He accidentally drops Yua head first onto the mat. He dropped her in such a way that it breaks Yua's neck. Cobra-san is all of a sudden concerned. He is breaking character. He didn't mean to hurt Yua. Cobra-san, he says, I didn't mean. The ref then checks on Yua. Eventually, the match is stopped. Paramedics come down to the ring. Lona, she runs to the ring and checks on her mom. We break away from this to a flashback to Lona lying in bed with her mom in the past. Lona asks her mom, "Where do we go when we die?" And Yua answered, "Well, I don't really know. Somewhere far away. Somewhere light or warm, maybe? It's all a big mystery, but don't you worry. I'm not going anywhere for a long time." Back now to the current day. At the hospital, Jacob, Yua's husband, is crying. He tells Lona and Uncle Blood that Yua is gone. She has passed away. They are all heartbroken. How will the three of them be able to move past this after the death of Yua? We jump ahead to 10 years later. Lona Steelrose, despite her mother's death in the ring, has followed in her footsteps and is a wrestler as well. She is in a match with a blonde woman, and as the match goes on, the blonde woman has Lona on her shoulders and she jumps off the top rope with her there and crushes Lona on the mat below. She then pins Lona, and after a quick 1, 2, 3 count from the ref, Lona loses the match. After the match in the dressing room, Lona's Uncle Blood pays Lona for her match. Lona asks if she can come back next weekend sometime and try her hand at some other wrestlers on the roster. She wants to advance her wrestling career, get better matches, face better opponents, start growing. But her Uncle Blood tries to tell her no. He tells her that she's too green, she's not ready. Lona says, well, she can't get ready because she can't find a trainer. Her uncle tells her that is because she is Yua Steelrose's daughter, and no one wants to touch her. Lona asks, but your family, and even you won't train me. Eventually, after some persisting, Lona's Uncle Blood admits that Lona's dad made him promise not to train Lona, as he was concerned about her getting hurt in the ring, like her mother. Later on, Lona confronts her father, Jacob, about this. She blames him for holding her back from her dreams. Her dad, he's been trying to stop her from wrestling all these years for fear of her dying too. He tells her, "How can you blame me, Lona? You're my daughter. I want you to be safe." Lona tells her dad that this is her choice, and she is going to prove to everyone that she can do this. She is going to be just like her mom. Lona's dad, upset, lashes out and says, "Yeah, and if you keep going, you'll end up like her, too." Lona, she storms away from her dad. She starts walking the city streets that night. And as she is walking those streets, she comes across an odd-looking stranger with spiky hair. This man is named Willard Necroton. Willard Necroton is not a normal man. He is a necromancer. Necroton has something to show Lona. He tries talking to her for a few minutes and tries to explain things. Eventually, though, he just grabs her hand and says, "Maybe this would be easier if I just show you." Some electricity crackles around them, and Necroton teleports Lona to this other planet called Valthar. Necroton tells her, "My name is Willard Necroton. Welcome to the Barren Bastion, my castle and home." We see there is a rocky cliff with steep stairs built into it, and it leads up all the way to a wrestling ring. It also has some bright lights pointing down on it and a whole seating area for spectators. Necroton tells Lona that he is a necromancer, and he is running a tournament of sorts. He holds up a belt that says the DLPW on it. He tells Lona that this belt is not the only prize, though. He says, "I'd like to talk to you about bringing your mom back to life." Issue 2. So what is the deal with this Necroton? Can he actually bring Lona's mother back to life? What does he want with her? Well, Necroton, he is drinking a martini, and he is explaining the situation to Lona. He tells her that there was a war here on planet Valthar, a big one, and he got defeated. The forces against him did not have the power to kill him, so they just exiled him here to this island, and that is where he has been living ever since. Lona asks, wait, if you're stuck here, then how did you get to Earth? Necroton explains, what you saw on Earth was merely an apparition. I can communicate and bring beings here, but away from this place I am only a whisper of my true self. My essence and soul remain trapped here forever. Now I know what you're thinking. Necro, can't you regroup and try taking over the world again? I thought about it, I tried it, I failed again. Honestly, all the world-conquering stuff is so much work. I just wanted to take a break after all that killing, you know? I had to find things to do in this place that would pass the time. So I started playing with different pieces of technology that I had found scattered in my castle during my many travels across the cosmos. It was during this time that I discovered television. Lona grows impatient and asks him to cut to the chase. Why is she here? Necroton tells her, very well, the reason you're here, he pauses, and then like a giddy fanboy he says, is because I love pro wrestling. When I discovered TV, I was amazed. Lutes and harps and outdoor theaters are fine in my world, but television, and it's night and day. I took in every single show, all the time. I loved it all. But what captured me most was pro wrestling. The action, the drama, the intensity. And that's where I saw your mother's last match with Cobra-san. And I saw you in the stands running to your mother, and it got me thinking. The best part of wrestling is not knowing who's going to win. The stakes are so high. And what would be the best way to raise those stakes even higher than winning or losing a championship belt? It would be by letting the winner of the battle bring one person of their choice back to life. Necroton shows Lona her mother in the next room. Lona runs to her mom and hugs her, but her mom just vanishes. She was not really there. Necroton asks, so what do you say, Lona? Will you join the Death Life Tag Team Tournament? Necroton teleports Lona back to Earth and tells her to think on it. If she decides to enter the tournament, she should come through the back of this shop tomorrow night. Lona asks, Necroton, this is a tournament, so who's gonna win? Necroton is confused. He asks, what are you talking about? I have no idea. That's the whole point, like I said. Lona explains, but pro wrestling, it's scripted. The outcome is predetermined. Necroton, in all of his watching of wrestling on TV, he never knew that it was fake. At least on Earth it was. Necroton, he just laughs and says, good one, Lona Steelrose. Talented and funny. I love it. Now enough joking. I have one more thing to show you. Necroton tells Lona that this is a tag team tournament, so she must find a partner. Lona doesn't have a partner. She doesn't even know who would be willing to help her. Necroton shows Lona a poster of Cobra-san on a wall, promoting a match he has that night against Kanata the Destroyer. Necroton tells Lona, I could think of one person who might be interested. I'll see you tomorrow. Lona, after that, gets a call from her dad. She ignores it. She instead goes inside the venue with the Cobra-san match happening tonight. When she gets inside the arena, she sees Cobra-san is in the ring. The match is about to begin. It is a no disqualification falls count anywhere match. The match starts. It is brutal and bloody. We are talking barbed wire on chairs. Kanata, he stabs a fork into Cobra-san's chest in the match, and then he uses light tubes and breaks them over Cobra-san. This is some real ECW shit. In the end, Hanada the Destroyer wins. After the match, Cobra-san is in the dressing room. His back has all sorts of wounds and cuts on it. The promoter asks Cobra-san, "I was 15 when you debuted in the TGPW. You were amazing, but now, what happened? Light tubes? Barbed wire? You're better than this." Cobra-san tells the man, "Trust me, I'm not." Lona approaches Cobra-san in his dressing room. Cobra-san seems to know who she is. Lona tells him, "Look, this is gonna sound crazy." Cobra-san interrupts her and says, "Oh, that necro guy talked to you too, huh? Transported me to some other dimension. Big black castle, right?" Cobra-san, he had the same thing happen to him that happened to Lona. Cobra-san knows that Lona wants to team up with him. He tells her to forget it. He can't win with her, she's too green, they would lose. Cobra-san starts telling Lona how good her mom was in the ring. Lona interrupts him and tells him to not talk about her mom. She says, "You killed her in that ring, and seeing you tonight, you wrestle like you know it. But if there's a chance of bringing her back, of me being able to be with my mom again, and you being free from all this, then I'm going to do it, with or without you. Nobody's going to fight harder for the chance to see my mom again than me. And maybe, if you feel as guilty as you look, we might make a good team." Cobra-san eventually agrees. He tells Lona to meet him tomorrow at the shop. That night, Lona phones her dad and tells him that she's going to be gone for a while to do something crazy, wrestling crazy. She tells him, "You've been trying to stop me from doing this for over a decade, and I'm still here, I'm still doing it, and I won't stop ever. This was Mom's dream and now it's mine." Lona's dad, knowing that he won't be able to stop his daughter, just tells her to be careful, and then he hangs up. After Lona's dad, Jacob, hangs up the phone, we then see a zoom out, and we see that Lona's dad is in fact Cobra-san himself. Yua and Jacob must never have told Lona when she was a little girl that Jacob was in fact this bad guy wrestler Cobra-san. And then, as Cobra-san, he accidentally killed his own wife in the ring, and he couldn't bear telling his daughter the truth after all of these years. And now, the two of them will be teaming up for a supernatural interstellar wrestling tournament. Issue 3. Jacob Steelrose, aka Cobra-san, is in a bar talking to Uncle Blood. They are discussing Lona. Cobra-san tells Blood that he should not have told Lona that he didn't want her trained. Blood says that Jacob's daughter has talent and she deserves the truth. He continues and says that Jacob should have told her that he was Cobra-san when she was little. Jacob, or Cobra-san, replies, "That's exactly it, Blood. She was a little girl. And I am, a heel wrestler, the bad guy. How could she understand that it was my job to insult everyone around me, including her own mom? We didn't want to confuse her, and me and Yua came to the decision together. And we were going to tell her until..." Blood interrupts and says, "Until you killed my sister?" Cobra-san to this says, "And I've barely been able to look Lona in the eye ever since. Every time I tell her I love her, I feel like I'm betraying her." Cobra-san then asks, very ominously, "Blood, what if I could bring Yua back?" Blood replies, "Now you're just talking crazy, man. Too many light tubes to the head." Cobra-san tells Blood, "I'm going someplace, away from here, and when I get back, you'll see." Cobra-san eventually leaves the bar and joins Lona to go meet this Necroton guy. Cobra-san and Lona meet up and head to the back of that shop the Necroton said to meet them at. They open the door in the back, and they are transported to the Death-Life Tournament. Cobra-san and Lona walk over to a sign-up table. They are told they will need a tag team name as they don't have one right now. The guy at the table says, "Let's see, Lona Steelrose and Cobra-san. Okay. How about Sun and Steel? Cobra Sun says that will do. The guy at the table gives them a key to their lodgings for the night and tells them their first match is tomorrow against a group called Orange Bang. Cobra Sun and Lona then head off to a bar in that world. Cobra Sun grabs a drink. Lona, she says they should be training. Cobra Sun, he just wants to drink for now, though. There are two people in that bar that seem really amped up. They are named Frank and Maggie. They are one of the other wrestlers in the tournament. Their tag team name is called FIZO, which stands for Fuck Your Stupid Opinions. A little dog in the bar that belongs to the bartender accidentally pees on Frank's leg. The bartender apologizes, but Frank is so angry, he goes to punch that dog. But Lona steps in and kicks Frank back, saving the dog. A bar fight then breaks out. Cobra Sun goes to step in, but he gets a beer mug in the back of his head. Maggie then puts Lona into a headlock. Frank comments to Maggie, "Hey, wait a minute, Maggie. These guys look familiar." Maggie responds, "You're right, Frank. That's Cobra Sun." Frank and Maggie then continue talking to Cobra Sun. Frank says, "Haha, we've seen you wrestle. You suck." Maggie adds, "Where's that place you're from? Earth? We heard the wrestling there is fake. Just a carny show for the dumbass masses. I'm gonna show you what real stakes look like." All of a sudden, a big orangutan named Nexel walks into the bar with his brother Petey. Nexel grabs Frank and throws him across the bar. These orangutans are also wrestlers. Their tag team name is Orange Bang. Nexel tells Frank and Maggie to please leave, and Frank and Maggie, they do. Afterwards, Nexel and Petey introduce themselves to Cobra Sun and Lona. They say, "You guys are Sun and Steel, yes? We believe our opponents should always be in their best condition for combat. We wish for a completely fair fight tomorrow. My name is Nexel, and this is my brother Petey. We go by the name of Orange Bang." Now, Nexel and Petey are very nice, but they do tell Cobra Sun and Lona that they are fighting to bring back their dead sister. She was taken from them many years ago, and they will not be holding back when they fight tomorrow. That night, Cobra Sun and Lona are in their lodgings and they are discussing matters. They are worried that they will have to fight for real. On Earth, wrestling is fake, but all their opponents here seem to be used to fighting for real. Lona tells Cobra Sun, "Look, we know how dangerous the moves we do inside the ring are. Now it's just a matter of us getting into that mindset that we have to let ourselves go." The next day, Necroton is in front of a huge crowd in his wrestling ring. He opens the tournament, he says. "The day we've all been waiting for is finally here. The opening round of the Death Life Tournament. Can you believe it? I can barely contain my excitement, and neither apparently can you." The secret whispers of an epic mystical tournament have traveled fast across space and time. We have a crowd that ranges from the mainland of this continent to the deepest corners of our galaxy. The true fans of the boots and tights are here, in the flesh, ready to consume the absolute best pro wrestling has to offer. And so, without further delays, ladies and lords, welcome to Necroton's Death Life Tag Team Tournament. We see the various tag teams that will be competing in this tournament. From Earth, there is Sun and Steel. From Juntu 4, there is Orange Bang. From Sorrow Crow, there is FIZO. From Donsuma, there is Pizza Party. From Mecha Moon, there is the Lucabots. Also from Earth, there is Puropack. From Valthar, there is the Knights of Rhine. Valthar is also the same planet that Necroton is from, and where this tournament is taking place. From Your Mom's Basement, there is the Devil Doers. Now, our opening match of the tournament will be Sun and Steel. whose members are Lona and Cobra Sun, versus Orangeabang, whose members are Nexel and Petey. Necroton explains the rules to the crowd. He says, "This is a tag team match, meaning, in order for both fighters to be in the ring, the active wrestler must tag in their partner to have them participate. Each team is allowed to interrupt one pin attempt or submission hold without a tag. Now, let's get down to action." The match starts. Nexel kicks Cobra Sun with a massive dropkick to start the match. When Cobra Sun gets up, Lona asks for a tag, but Cobra Sun refuses. Cobra Sun rushes Nexel, but Nexel dodges, and then Nexel feeds Cobra Sun a huge strike. Lona asks Cobra Sun again for a tag, but is still refused. Cobra Sun is refusing to tag in Lona because he is, of course, her dad, and he doesn't want her getting hurt. Nexel, though, he does tag in his brother Petey. This allows them to do a double team move called Attenborough Cradle. It is sort of like a suplex off the corner rope with the partner joining in for a stunner or something. Anyway, Cobra Sun, after getting Attenborough's Cradle done to him, seems down for the count. Petey is pinning Cobra Sun. The ref counts 1, 2. Lona, she screams no. She then jumps into the ring, using their team's one interrupt they are allowed, and she uses it to save Cobra Sun as she smashes Petey off of him before the ref can finish the 3 count. Lona, she then asks for a tag again, and this time Cobra Sun gives in and tags her into the match. Lona, she is on fire. She jumps and steps on Petey's head and springboard off of him over to Nexel and knees him right in the face. Lona, she then goes to the top ropes and does a moonsault off the top rope, flipping and landing right on Petey in the center of the ring. She then pins Petey, and the ref counts 1, 2, 3. Ding, ding, ding. The match is over. The bell rings. Lona and Cobra Sun are winners. After the match in the ring, Nexel and Petey are sad as they won't be able to revive their sister. Lona tells them she is sorry, but she has to get her mom back. 2 hours later, it is time for the next match of the tournament. It is the Knights of Rhine, whose members are Maximilian Torsten and Alphonse Elric, versus Pizza Party, whose members are Pizza Man and Racket. The match begins with a Hurricane Rana by Pizza Man. Racket goes for something called a New York Slice, which is dodged by Elric. Elric then tags in his partner Torsten. They set up their finishing move and they pull it off. Their finishing move is called the King Arthur's Table, and they do it on Racket. And Racket, he is done after this. Elric, he goes for the pin, and it is a quick 1, 2, 3, and the Knights of Rhine win. Pizza Man, he goes over to check on his friend, Racket. Elric, he comments that was too easy. Their next opponents will now be Sun and Steel. Elric, when he learns of this, comments, "Looks like those Earthlings are next." Torsten says they had better steal their bones. Elric continues, "For we are coming to break them." Issue 4. We have a flashback to 1 year ago. The Knights of Rhine wrestlers, Elric and Torsten, are meeting with their king. Their king was the one that warred with Necroton in the past, 20 years ago in the past, here on planet Valthar. Their war ended in a stalemate, and Necroton was banished to that island. The king hates that their war ended in a stalemate. He tells Elric and Torsten, "Necroton should have been defeated that day, but we were not strong enough. Our greatest warrior was struck down in that final battle. Velkis the Red. He was our only hope for true victory, the only wizard capable of defeating Necroton." The king wants Elric and Torsten to enter Necroton's wrestling tournament and win. And when they win, He wants them to wish for Valkus the Red to be resurrected and summoned back from hell, and then they will get Valkus the Red to finally defeat Necroton for good. So that is the motivation for Elric and Torsten to be in this fight. We jump now back to the current day. Cobra Sun and Lona are training. Cobra Sun tells Lona that before he turned heel, he was actually on a tag team with Lona's mom. He tells Lona how good the two of them work together. Their tag team finishing move was something called the Sword Sunrise. Cobra Sun, he wants to train Lona so that the two of them can work better together as a team. Lona says, yes, show me. They practice some moves and train for hours, and Lona says that she is ready to now kick some ass. It is now time for the next match. Sun and Steel versus the Knights of Rhine. When the match begins, Lona gets punched by Elric. Lona returns that punch with a knee to the face. Elric, he flies back, but he tags in Torsten. Torsten steps on Lona and smashes her into the ground. Elric, he then gets tagged back, and they pull off their double tag team move, the King Arthur's Table. This was the move that won them their previous match. They land it on Lona, and Lona, she seems down for the count. Elric goes for the pin. Cobra Sun is worried, but miraculously Lona kicks out. The crowd goes crazy. She just kicked out of their finishing move. Lona tries to get her way to the corner to tag in Cobra Sun, but she gets pulled away, and Elric tags Torsten back in, and Torsten knocks Lona back to the ground. Lona, though, she stands up. She's not defeated. She wipes the blood from her mouth and she says, "My name is Lona Steelrose. My mom was Ewa Steelrose, and I'm going to get her back." Lona dodges a punch from Torsten. She clotheslines him and then tags in Cobra Sun. Cobra Sun then pulls off a massive German suplex. Lona then slaps Cobra Sun's back and tags herself back in. She gets on the top rope from the corner, and she does a massive jump in the air, landing a killer elbow drop. Lona goes for the pin, and Cobra Sun, he runs toward Elric and does a suicide jump through the ropes, tackling him into the stands. All while Lona gets a 1-2-3 count and wins the match. The crowd goes insane, and Necroton, watching from the stands, comments, "Sun and Steel win, what a match!" Later on, the ref raises Lona and Cobra Sun's hands in victory. Once Lona and Cobra Sun leave the ring, it is now time for the main event of the night. It is Paizo versus Puropack. Paizo makes their way to the ring. They are the heels. The crowd is booing them. Their opponents, residing from Earth, are Puropack. Maggie from Paizo yells out to them, "Do your worst, Earthlings." One of the wrestlers from Puropack removes their mask and says, "Oh, don't you worry, I plan to." That Puropack wrestler that removed his mask is revealed to be Lona's Uncle Blood. Lona and Cobra Sun are shocked and surprised by the revelation. They ask him, "What are you doing?" Uncle Blood replies, "You think you're the only ones trying to get Ewa back? The only ones Necroton invited? She was my sister." Before the bell can even ring, Frank from Paizo attacks Puropack from behind. The ref yells, "Ring the bell, ring the bell!" The match is on. Uncle Blood does a kick into Frank's face. Frank quips back, "That all you got? I'll do you one better." Frank punches Blood in his belly. He then lifts Uncle Blood on his shoulder. Frank then tags in Maggie. They are setting up their finishing move. Maggie jumps off the top rope, and they land it. It is called the Coin Pouch of Judas. It is an insane move where Maggie from the top rope lands on top of Blood's head and smashes it down to the ground. And then Maggie puts Uncle Blood into a naked chokelock submission hold. Blood is refusing to tap. he instead passes out. The ref rings the bell, stopping the match. Maggie, though, won't let go of the hold. The ref is trying to pull Maggie off, even though the match is over and Fizo has already won. Frank gets on the top rope and does a jumping leg drop, landing right on top of Uncle Blood. After all of the commotion, eventually paramedics and Cobra Sun and Lona enter the ring. It is anarchy. Later on in the back room, Necroton visits Lona, Cobra Sun, as well as Uncle Blood and the other member of Puropac. Necroton tells them that Blood's neck is indeed broken, but he will live. Lona asks if Fizo is going to be disqualified from the tournament. Necroton replies, "Well, they're an incredible tag team. They have true skill and passion, and they add so much drama." Cobra Sun, he pulls out a backpack of classic weapons used in wrestling on Earth in extreme no DQ matches. Stuff like light tubes and kendo sticks and barbed wire baseball bats and chairs. Cobra Sun tells Lona, "Don't bother, Lona. Necroton wants a spectacle. He wants our blood to boil. Fizo says our wrestling is fake. They think they know how we do things on Earth. We're gonna show them just how real we can get." Issue 5. We have a flashback to Maggie of Fizo. She's in a hospital. Her son dies. She gets in the hospital bed with him and hugs him. This is why Maggie is fighting in the Death-Life tournament. She is trying to bring her boy back to life. We jump back to the present day again, to the Death-Life tournament. Cobra Sun is making the case to Necroton that the final match between Sun and Steel and Fizo should be a no disqualification, barbed wire ladder falls count anywhere death match. Cobra Sun argues to Necroton, "You say you want drama? You want the best possible match? This will get us there." Frank of Fizo is against this, but Necroton, he thinks on it and he does agree. It would be an amazing spectacle. He allows it. Later on, before the match is about to begin, Lona and Cobra Sun are in their dressing room. Lona has never fought in a match like this. She asks, "Is it gonna hurt?" And Cobra Sun says, "Yes, but you have to push that pain down deep, separate it from yourself and hide it away where it can't touch you. And don't be afraid of the blood. Wear the red like a badge of honor to show how resilient you are, that you can't be beaten." Well, the match is about to begin. The grand finale, the main event between Sun and Steel and Fizo, a falls count anywhere, no DQ match. Tags between partners are not necessary. Necroton introduces them both down to the ring, and then the match begins. Cobra Sun kicks Frank in his face. Maggie throws a barbed wire chair at Cobra Sun. Lona sneaks up behind Maggie and pulls her legs, causing Maggie to fall and slam her head on the ring bottom. Lona gets ready to strike with a barbed wire bat, but Frank suicide dives through the ropes and tackles Lona. Frank and Maggie are then double-teaming Lona outside the ring, but Cobra Sun dives over the ropes and takes to the sky, and he lands right on Frank and Maggie outside the ring, and they all smash into the gate wall that is separating them from the fans. Cobra Sun then walks toward Maggie, but he gets low blowed from behind. Lona, she starts climbing the ladder that is outside the ring. Cobra Sun, he gets hit with the barbed wire baseball bat, and Frank places Cobra Sun on the table set up outside the ring. Lona is now on top of the ladder, but Maggie starts shaking it. Cobra Sun, last minute, he gets off the table and hits Frank and tosses Frank on the table. And Lona, she falls off that ladder, but she flips and turns it into a senton bomb right onto Frank through that table outside the ring. It is an amazing, crowd-pleasing move. Everyone is abuzz. Necroton, he is losing it as he is announcing the match. Maggie inside the ring throws some chains and wraps it around Cobra Sun's neck, and she drags him inside the ring. Frank, he also joins Maggie in the ring, and he starts feeding Cobra Sun a few chair shots. He then sprinkles thumbtacks on the ring floor, and Frank then puts Cobra Sun into a Boston Crab submission hold right over those thumbtacks. Cobra Sun in the hold is struggling to crawl out of it as he is crawling on those thumbtacks and they are cutting him up. Lona, she slides back into the ring. Maggie tries to run interference with some chains, but Lona overpowers her and clotheslines her. Lona then whacks Frank off of Cobra Sun, breaking the Boston Crab submission hold. She then tosses Frank into the corner, and Cobra Sun gets up, and he tells Lona to get him some chairs. They set up some chairs, sitting up in the middle of the ring. Cobra Sun then goes over to the corner, and he does a top rope superplex to Frank right onto those chairs in the middle of the ring, with Frank's spine landing right in the middle of those chairs. It is a move that would definitely break someone's back. Cobra Sun then goes for the pin on Frank. 1, 2, Frank kicks out. What? Cobra Sun tells Lona that they should go for their finishing move. Lona goes on the top ropes. Cobra Sun lifts Frank and starts a powerbomb, but he holds Frank on his shoulders. But as Frank is on Cobra Sun's shoulders, he jabs his fingers into Cobra Sun's eyes, and he rips off Cobra Sun's mask. Cobra Sun backs off and says, "No, no, no!" Lona, who is standing on the top rope, seeing Cobra Sun demasked, sees that Cobra Sun is her father, and she says, "Dad?" Maggie then whacks Lona with a light tube in the back of her head, and Lona goes down. Cobra Sun tries to help her, but Frank grabs Cobra Sun and holds him back. And Maggie goes over to pin Lona, and 1, 2, 3. The match is over. Lona and Cobra Sun have lost. Faizo has won. We now have a flashback to when Faizo first formed for this tournament. We saw earlier at the beginning of this issue that Maggie lost her child who died. Well, she is fighting to bring back her son. But apparently Frank also lost a kid, and both of them teamed up for this tournament so that they could get their children back. But the problem is, this is a tag team tournament, and the winner of this tournament are only allowed to bring one person back from the dead. So Frank and Maggie, they made a deal. They would team up for this tournament, and if they won, then they agreed to fight each other, and the winner of a match between the two of them would be the one that would get their child back. Back to the present once again. Necroton walks over to the ring with the tag team belts for the champions, Faizo. He congratulates them, they are the champions. But then he sees that Frank and Maggie are preparing to fight each other. Necroton asks them, what are you guys doing? Frank asks Maggie, to the death? Maggie replies, to the death. The two of them are getting ready to fight each other. Issue 6. We have a flashback to the night that Yua died. Finally, after Lona went to sleep, Uncle Blood smacked Jacob, aka Cobra Sun, in the face. He asked him what happened. Jacob answered, I've done that move hundreds of times, I don't know. Uncle Blood replied, look at you, you're small, without that mask, what even are you? And then he left and slammed the door, and Jacob went into Lona's room and cried. We have another flashback to the day that Yua and Jacob met. Cobra Sun was in a match. He was small time then, just on the indie circuit, and he did this move where he jumped off this balcony doing a shooting star press flip into a DDT, which would probably be impossible in real life. Yua was watching in the crowd, and she was impressed, and she said to him, hey. Afterwards, the two of them went to dinner. Yua was a wrestler herself back then. She was also acting as a recruiter for Tokyo Grand Pro Wrestling, and she thought that Cobra Sun had talent. She asked him how he got into wrestling. Cobra-san answered, my father was a luchador. This mask was handed down to me when I was very young, when he died. I've been trying to make his memory proud. Lona tells him, when you're in that ring, you wrestle like you're trying to prove something. You hide under that mask. Cobra-san takes offense to this, and he told her, what does she know about it? Lona told him that she didn't mean to offend, and he is very talented, considering he's only been wrestling for about 2 years at that point. She told him, look, you're already so good, but it can't all be flashy moves. There has to be a connection with the crowd. Cobra-san told her that maybe she's being too honest. Lona said, don't worry, you'll learn to love me. Look, all I'm saying is, the crowd can tell if you're open to them, mask or no mask. People can tell when you're holding something back. You have to learn how to be yourself in that ring. The good and the bad. Back to the current day. FISO members Frank and Maggie are battling to the death. Meanwhile, Cobra-san goes backstage with Lona while the paramedics work on her. Backstage eventually, Lona wakes up. She is thankfully okay. Lona asks her dad, why didn't you tell me you were Cobra-san? Jacob answers, your mom, I couldn't do it. I couldn't let you see who I really was. Lona says, but I know who you are. You're my dad. At that moment, Necroton bursts into the room. He asks if Lona can walk. She can. Necroton tells them that he needs them both in the ring immediately. His champs, FISO, Frank and Maggie, they just killed each other. They're both dead. Necroton and Lona and Cobra-san walk out to the stage. Necroton gets on the mic and says to the crowd, with FISO knocked out of top spot, we have decided to give the belts to the next most deserving team. So please welcome our new champions, Sun and Steel. Lona and Cobra-san are a little confused, but they walk to the ring and accept their championship belts. Necroton tells them, just take them. Lona asks, does this mean they get her mom back now? Necroton tells her, after this we go to the resurrection chamber. Now, take them. If we don't have champions, no one will buy tickets for next year's tournament. Necroton then turns to the crowd and says, thank you for coming, folks. That's our show. Good night. After the festivities, Necroton walks Lona and Cobra-san to this resurrection chamber. He tells them that he has to gather a few supplies first, but they should wait here. While Necroton is doing that, Lona and her dad wait, and they talk about Lona's mom. They also talk about how Jacob did not tell his daughter that he was Cobra-san, and all the time the two of them lost by not being honest with each other. Lona tells her dad, I don't think mom would have wanted you to feel guilty. She knew the risks. It's time to let it out. You can't keep pushing it down. Cobra-san says, I want to, Lona, but I don't know how. And Lona replies, me neither, but that's how we'll move forward together. Both of them say they love each other and they hug. They've kind of made up. Necroton now comes back, and he tells them, there's been a slight change of plans. Necroton admits, you know how I said I used to be an all-powerful necromancer? Well, I still have a lot of power, but the necromancy, Lona and her dad are pissed. They ask, wait, you lied to us? You can't bring her back? Necroton tells them, lied is such a strong word. I thought I had enough juice to pull this off this year, but if I try and bring back your mom now, she might come back as a zombie. Cobra-san and Lona threaten Necroton, but Necroton, he then grows 10 times in size, and he gives them a warning in a very intimidating way. He says,
I may be an entertainer now, but before I was doing this, I was a conqueror of worlds. Do you know how many millions of souls I have crushed to dust? Do you think I've forgotten how to protect myself and my interests? I may not be able to raise a life, but I can still take yours.
Necroton then shrinks back to normal size, and he tells them, look, I want to help you get your mother back, so I have made alternative arrangements. I was worried I wouldn't have enough juice to truly raise another life from the ground this year, so I made a call. I'm not the only powerful being who loves our beautiful sport. You've been watched by the grandest pro wrestling fan in existence. They said they're willing to fight you in a 2-on-1 handicap match, and they can raise the dead with a snap of their fingers. Cobra Sun asks if it is another necromancer they're going to be fighting. Necroton replies, "Not exactly. Think higher. You're going to wrestle God." And they are a huge wrestling fan, so much so that they do it professionally, and they're always looking for a new challenger. Maybe you two have what it takes to finally bring down the best wrestler of them all. One last battle to get your mom back. Necroton then transports the three of them to God's wrestling arena. A sign reads, "Heaven's Gate Pro Wrestling." Necroton tells them, "We're here. Want to wrestle with the creator of the universe?" God himself is in the middle of the ring and he pronounces,
"Sun and Steel, I have watched the entirety of the Death Life tournament. You are most impressive. Here we are, the both of you versus the one of me, for the life of your mother. The fight of a millennium. Shall we begin?"
Issue 7. Well, the match is happening. Necroton gets into the ring and announces the competitors. He says, "First, in the red corner, the Drowner of Worlds, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, God." God, he gets in the ring and he flexes his ripped muscles for the crowd. And in the blue corner, the winners of my very own Death Life tournament, the unbreakable duo, the Serpent and the Flower, Sun and Steel. God, he then asks them,
"Which one of you shall I face first?"
Lona and her dad discuss, and Cobra Sun tells Lona that the honor is all hers. The bell rings. The match starts. God grabs Lona and starts bear hugging her. He then tosses Lona behind him outside of the ring. The announcer says, "Whoa! A huge belly-to-belly suplex by the architect of creation!" Cobra Sun then gets on the top rope, while God runs and bounces off the ropes on the other side of the ring to build up speed. And then God is charging at the side of the ring, preparing to do a suicide dive at Lona. But Cobra Sun interferes. He jumps off the top rope, kicking God in the face, and God gets knocked back. God then tells Cobra Sun,
"Fret not, child, it shall soon be over."
God picks Cobra Sun up and does a move called a Tiger Driver 98. The move lands with a huge boom, and then God tries to pin Cobra Sun. But Lona, from outside of the ring, jumps up to the top of the corner of the rope, and then dives on God and kicks him off, and stops it before the 3 count finishes. Lona checks on her dad, but God grabs her from behind and does a move called a Crucifix Bomb to Lona. Cobra Sun then sneaks up behind God and puts him into a headlock. He then tries to slam God back, doing a Snapdragon suplex, but God manages to reverse it and flip in a certain way and lands on his feet. God tells Cobra Sun,
"Beautiful effort, Cobra Sun, but you are still no match for me."
Lona jumps on the top ropes and springboards off of them and lands a stunner on God. Cobra Sun then holds God in the center of the ring, and Lona gets on the top ropes. They are finally going to try and do their tag team finishing move. Cobra Sun starts doing a powerbomb, and as Cobra Sun has God on his shoulders, Lona jumps off and clotheslines God down, and Cobra Sun completes the powerbomb. Necroton, as the announcer, is ecstatic. They finally did it. They pulled off the Sword Sunrise double team finishing move. Lona and Cobra Sun then attempt a double pin on God. The ref begins the count. 1, and then boom, God kicks out. Necroton says, "Not even a 2 count. Their finisher had almost no effect." God begins getting up. He's on his knees, but a single drop of blood pours down from his nose, and it hits the mat. Necroton can't believe it. He says, "Wait a minute. It can't be, is that? It is! It is! The impossible has happened! Sun and Steel have made God bleed! They made God bleed! God gets up and says,
Enough of this.
God grabs them and puts both of their heads under his arms, and he does a double DDT. And then God picks both Cobra Sun and Lona up and puts them above his shoulders. He then ascends to the top of the ropes. And then God does his finisher, the Pillars of Golgotha. Lona and Cobra Sun get slammed down into the ring with such force that the ring breaks. And God pins them both. 1, 2, 3. God wins, and that is it. God then talks to Lona and Cobra Sun. He tells them,
It has been many ages since a human has caused me physical pain. You fought me with all the strength you had. I present to you the God Belts as a symbol not of your victory, but of your ability to go toe-to-toe with me.
Lona replies, I don't want a belt. I want my mom. God to this says,
I wish I could give you what you ask for, but there are no answers that will satisfy the deepest questions of all. I will not give you what you seek. But I am moved by your plight and your strength, and for that, I will open your mind to the wonder of a memory. One that is very familiar to you, but you only remember part of it. I shall restore it all to you now.
God touches Lona's head, and Lona relives a memory from when she was a girl. We see Lona as a girl in her bedroom, and her mom are talking about death and where people go after they die. And Yua told Lona, well, I don't really know. Somewhere far away, somewhere light or warm maybe. It's all a big mystery, but don't you worry. Now, this scene is actually one that we saw way back in issue 1. Except there was actually more to that scene, and God has unlocked that memory within Lona. The scene continues, and Yua says to Lona, I'm not going anywhere for a long time yet. Actually, death, it might kind of be like wrestling. A lot of people think wrestling is about the outcome, the ending, predetermined. Why bother watching? But we all know where we're going in the end. Eventually we die. Our outcome is always known. I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think it's about the end, Lona. It's about the story. And everyone's story is worth telling. No matter how it starts, no matter how it ends. Lona asks, but when the end does happen, will you be watching me, even after you're gone? We then jump back to the present day in that ring. Lona hugs her dad in the ring, and Yua, Lona's mother, is watching from the crowd. They are in heaven after all, and Yua is proud. She says out loud to herself, that's my girl, that's my girl. So even in the afterlife, Yua was there watching her daughter. And that is the end of Do A Powerbomb. Okay, so that was Do A Powerbomb, and I thought this one was so fun. I thought it worked on so many levels. The overall story was pretty compelling. This Lona Steelrose and her mom dying, and her wanting to compete in this tournament to bring her mom back to life. The overall tournament is just a really fun concept to build a book around. All these kooky, crazy, different wrestling teams. So fun seeing them square off. I thought a lot of the characters were really fun, like Necroton, even Cobra Sun and the daughter. I liked some of their connection in here as well. I like that the book subverted our expectations. So I was kind of expecting Lona and Cobra Sun to win the tournament, but they didn't. Faizo won, but then Faizo fought each other to the death, so that was an interesting twist in the story. And then Necroton can't even bring back their mother to life. He needs to go one level up, and God gets brought into the story, which is crazy. And they fight God, and that was not something I expected. And part of me was thinking, oh, maybe they're going to beat God, and they're going to bring her mother back that way, but of course God wins, which makes sense. You can't beat God. But they don't bring the mother back, but still kind of is a touching happy ending there with her, little melancholy, sweet ending. So yeah, really great stuff, really fun. The artwork was awesome. This was a really good book. I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Really solid stuff. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you also dug this book. Now, next week, I'm going to be kicking off a brand new series, one that I've been meaning to cover for a long time, and I think it is one of the most requested books I have not gotten to yet. So next week, I will be beginning my coverage of Fables. So tune in for that.